Easter holiday, you'll probably be aware that the next 24 hours will see some of the busiest times on our roads so far this year, and indeed, if it's a normal Easter, probably for the whole of the year it as a whole, because so many people try and get away. So what does the government plan to try and improve, not in time, I imagine, for this weekend, try and improve some of our roads? Well, nearly £50 million is on its way, but where and why? Richard Holden is Conservative MP and also Roads Minister and joins me now. Where's the money going, Minister, and how has it been determined? Good morning to you, sir.
Morning, Nick. First of all, can I just say that we have suspended as many of the improvements on the road network and as many of the roadworks as possible over the getaway weekend. We try and do that at these peak periods of the year. I think it's a really important thing to do to try and make roads move as quickly as possible, because you're absolutely right, this is one of the peak times of the year for people going out, seeing friends and family. I'll be doing that myself. But what we're trying to do with this scheme at the moment, the Safer Road scheme, which is the third tranche of this, which we're announcing today.
And this is fresh money, is it, Minister? Sorry to talk over you.
£47.5 million. Well, it's been allocated for the Safer Roads Fund. So this is money which has been in the department's budget. Today we're allocating it to these specific road schemes across the country, 27 of them, from Surrey, places like the A25 there, all the way up to Newcastle, places like Felixstowe Road on the way out of Ipswich as well, roads in Essex, Hampshire. But these are basically what we're trying to do is there are real pinch points on the road network where there's road safety is a major issue, and that's particularly the case on some of these A roads. And what we've tried to do over the last few years is get away from something which says it's either all the driver's responsibility, it's all the road's responsibility. What we're trying to do is try and stop people dying and stop serious injuries on our road network. So this £50 million investment, we're expecting to prevent around 750 fatal or serious incidents over the next 20 years or so. So it's got a good investment back for the taxpayer, but also will save hundreds of families, the impact of having a loved one killed or seriously injured on the network.
So a little more detail, Mr. Holden. What is done? Are they more carriageways? Are they roundabouts? Are they more signage? What typically do the men and women actually put in these roads and these junctions?
No, that's a really good question. So some of this will be everybody will know of roads in their areas which have got issues like this.
Think of one
so
now.
It'll be sort of junction layout changes. There'll be segregated corridors to try and get cyclists and walkers away from the main carriageway, so there might be improved crossing points. In certain areas, you'll be looking at resurfacing of certain roads, particularly when you're changing alignments of traffic. So some areas it'll be significant vegetation clearage as well. So there's all sorts of different things, very practical things which are going to really affect road safety in a lot of small schemes right across the country.
As we're talking about road safety, Minister, and I would imagine this is a question you've anticipated, you may be aware that a crash on what's called a smart motorway that killed two people would not have happened if there'd been a hard shoulder, a coroner has said. This is the tragedy concerning Derek Jacobs, who was 83, killed on the M1 near Sheffield. His van suffered a burst tyre. He was forced to stop in the inside lane where the hard shoulder had been removed. His was hit subsequently by a Ford motor vehicle. Can we scrap these motorways, these smart motorways, Minister?
Well, what we've done is we're putting £900 million in of investment into this smart motorway network, basically to provide refuge areas right across the network. We've put another £105 million in recently to improve the CCTV and vehicle monitoring as well on them. I think the truth is, more broadly, sadly and tragically, people do also die on hard shoulders on our motorways as well. And overall, because the fact that they're separated traffic going in different directions, our A roads are around you are three times more likely to be killed or seriously injured on the A road network as well. So what I want to do is improve road safety right across the board, which is why we're doing the refuge areas and the better monitoring on the smart motorways, but also today looking at some of those smaller roads and to try and ensure that on the most difficult areas we're getting the investment where it's needed in order to improve road safety, because I don't want to see anybody dying on our roads.
No, of course. So the building of these so-called smart motorways has recommenced, just to clarify.
Just to clarify on that, when the pause happened, basically there was 3 smart motorways over 50% constructed. Those are being finished. There's 2 of them in the very final stages now. But all the smart motorway network, the entire smart motorway network, is getting better cameras, and they're getting refuge areas as well. What we've said is we'll pause the entire building of any new smart motorways until we have proper data, and we've said that's going to happen for several years. We're about 2 years into that now, so we've said at least 5 years before we'd even look again, because we need to see the data on the network before we would do any new smart motorways.
If you have concerns about existing building new ones, Minister, you must have concerns about existing ones.
Well, that's exactly why we're spending £900 million retrofitting the emergency refuge areas onto them, and we're improving the monitoring, and we're increasing the number of traffic officers, and we're also that's why we're putting so much cash and support in to the existing network to improve driver safety.
The newspaper reports today that no new motorways, smart motorways, will be built because of a mix of concerns over safety and cost. Is that correct as well, the cost of them?
Traditionally, smart motorways you get more improvement per pound spent, but I think what we're doing is we're retrofitting the entire network with these new refuge areas and better monitoring. I think that's what people want to see. I want people to have confidence travelling on any of our roads.
But they don't, Minister. More than 80 people have died on these so-called smart motorways since July 2022. More than 80. They don't have confidence to them. Would you feel safe on one of these if you broke down?
Well, look, I drive on our motorway network all the time. And what I would say is, we do, every death on our roads is a tragedy. I want to avoid them all. But what I would say is that, across the entire road network, 1,700 people die a year. Over 20,000 are seriously injured. This has to be seen in context, and we've got to invest where we can to improve road safety. That's why we're putting £900 million into the smart motorways today. Another £50 million to target 27 of the smaller roads with some of those really difficult things that we want to see improved as well.
Just a couple of other questions while I have the benefit of you on the line. Would you agree that a salary of £84,144 per annum is a decent salary? Would you agree?
I would agree,
yes. Why is it then some of your Conservative colleagues find it necessary to seek other work on the side?
Look, I think
Such as Scott Benton, who has to be lobbying for cash for access.
No, I think you're raising that particular issue today. Look, I'm glad that the Chief Whip's taken swift action and ensured that he's been suspended from the parliamentary party. I'm glad that there's now a proper investigation underway, and I hope that happens swiftly. What I would say, though, is that, MPs like myself, I was on the APPG, All-Party Parliamentary Group, for tackling gambling-related harm, alongside Ian Duncan-Smith, who's been a big campaigner in that area, and also the SNP's Ronnie Cowan and Labour's Carolyn Harris from the other side of the aisle as well. And one of the things that we've been pushing for is this proper review to take place into the 2005 Gambling Act to look at some of the issues around, particularly the massive expansion in online gambling. But that
doesn't affect Scott Benton, is it? This is more Tory sleaze with Mr. Benton, isn't it?
Well, I mean, Scott Benton has now been suspended by the Conservative Party and is facing a formal parliamentary investigation. The government's moved pretty swiftly in this area more broadly to say that nobody can do a job which involves basically paid lobbying, which is what Mr. Benton stands accused of, which is why he's lost the whip and is facing, quite rightly, a parliamentary standards investigation right now.
Last couple of questions. How confident are you that the Port of Dover will function well this Easter weekend?
Well, we know that over the years there's always been pinch points on the road network, over the Eastern network, and also at the summer getaway time. I am hopeful that I saw their message in their press release yesterday saying they're doing their very best to tackle the issues that have been there. I think some of those have eased pretty quickly, but again, they are working on them. You can't control for certain things, like the weather in the Channel, but I think you can do everything and I'm glad that they are doing everything they can to make as much mitigation as possible for those issues that they've been facing.
Is this a result of Brexit?
No, we've always seen issues around our road network at peak getaway times.
I don't recall Dover taking 24 hours on a coach to get through Dover prior to Brexit, Minister. Do you?
I think if you look back to some of the stories from 2012, 2010, when there were issues in the channel, particularly with weather in the channel, you always saw backlogs there. What I want to do is see as few of those as possible. It's one of the reasons that, as Roads Minister, just in the last few days, that we've removed as many as possible right across the entire strategic road network of the roadworks that were planned or in place to ensure that as many people can travel as smoothly as possible over the Easter weekend. And
surely
personally, I'll be going back to northwest Durham with my girlfriend to spend time in the UK this summer, Easter and this summer.
I wish you a safe journey, but you must accept if we now have to have individual passports checked on a coach carrying perhaps 40 plus people, that's obviously going to slow matters down, Minister. You're a plain-speaking bloke, you get that.
I think what we want to see, as far as possible, is proper protection of our borders. And
indeed,
and I
as
think
a result of Brexit, we have to look at 40 different passports, don't we?
Well, I think what we want to see is
how long they've been out of Europe, back into Europe. Have they been in Spain for a fortnight? I mean, it all adds up, doesn't it, Minister?
I want to see our borders under control, and if that means checking individual passports, I think that's a sensible thing that most members of the public and listeners to your show, Nick, would expect the government to do.
Lastly, your senior colleague, Deputy Chair Lee Anderson, tells the Sun newspaper today you're off to Durham. He's planning a family barge trip on the Llangollen Canal, if I'm saying that correctly. It was, quote, set me back £1,200 for 3 nights. The migrants, who are on their way to Dorset, should think themselves lucky. Do you concur? Are they lucky to be on this barge in Portland?
Well, look, I think this is the first of one of many of these of things we're looking at. Basically, I would want to see hundreds of our hotels across the country taken up with illegal migrants. What I want to see is people, A, not coming, and B, if they do get here illegally, removed as quickly as possible. I think this is a good step in the right direction. Obviously, one barge.
Are they
is
lucky,
the total
do you
answer.
think, these folk who are going to the barge, as Lee Anderson says? Are they lucky?
Well, I don't think they should. I don't think they should be here in the first place. If they're illegal migrants, I think they should be deported as quickly as possible. So that's what
we don't know the legality until we're processing. This is the hold-up, isn't it? It takes so long
exactly,
to process them, Minister.
And this is why we want to get them separated out as quickly as possible. And onto look, in terms of being lucky, let's just look at the Scottish government for its own Ukrainian refugees who it took in held hundreds of them on similar facilities in the port of Glasgow.
Yeah, they did.
So I think we just need to be these are sensible places to process, and I want to see people process as quickly as possible in a secure environment where they're not impacting on local communities up and down the country. I think this and the disused military bases are a sensible and proportionate response to that. Okay. And I want to see this rolled out as quickly as possible, because what I want to see is these people not crossing the channel, because they know that if they come here illegally and have no right to do so, that they're removed as quickly as possible.
Minister, a safe passage to you and your girlfriend up to North West Durham. Enjoy your Easter weekend. Thank you. Richard Holden, appearing here on LBC 3 minutes after 8 news headlines. Thomas Watts.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.